Okay, let's get on with it. Let's do a little bit of extinction. I start with a little question. Okay, are we the last humans on Earth, the last generation of humans on Earth? And what I see around me does not look very promising. And let me give you here, for instance. Here's my dear friend and countryman, Pope Franky. And there was an article this week says where he says, right, private property is a secondary right. Man, that must have ticked off all the rich folk, all the conservatives that support him. What do you mean private property is a secondary right? And he says the right to property, it is a natural right, but secondary, derived from the right that everyone has, which is born of the universal destiny of created goods. So we're all entitled to something. God given, I guess, because here you have the representative of God himself telling us, okay? The social disasters caused by pandemic, which has lasted for 15 months, leave too many unemployed and degrading jobs for which a deep reform of the economy and essentially human work are necessary. And he said that the current job for so many Changarine workers, for the migrant and the precarious, but especially for so many women, to begin with domestic workers and street vendors, is dangerous, dirty, and degrading. So if you do any of those jobs, you know where you stand with the Pope, okay? And yeah, this comes at the heels of the Pope saying something about also homosexuals a few months back, I think, a couple months back. And that didn't set well with the conservatives either. He was saying essentially that, we should accept them in the Catholic Church. And part of the problem is that Catholic Church, like so many other churches today, they're losing customers. they're losing people, everywhere. And in fact, recently we had the Southern Baptists, and they had a little bit of a rift, and apparently there's going to be a breakup of the Southern Baptist congregation. And again, they're like 14 million strong. They've been dropping all these last few years, and now they might even have a split, a schism, like Catholic Church with the Protestants in the 1600s, right? 16th century. So, you got to look at this. You got to find out, if the church is breaking up, and church, and I mean all churches for that matter, and they're losing customers, what effect does that have on, on our notion of morality, family, etc., things that have been traditionally the foundation of society. Okay, we're getting into a world where we go with individuals, okay, and family is dying. Family belongs to the days of manufacturing services. That's an individualistic society. And I think this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to see if they can rescue some of the good things that the Catholic Church has done. Of course, I'm sure people can remember all the bad things that the church did as well. And so let's pile up on top of this here, the fact that the Chinese empire is expanding. Okay? And this is making the United States very nervous. Okay, you can see what happened in 1980, 2000, 2020, how the Chinese are muscling in on the U.S. empire. Okay, the red zones are where the United States used to have a little bit of influence, but now that influence has been taken over by China. In other words, China is buying them out, essentially. They have money now and they're spreading it around. Meanwhile, the United States is having economic problems, trying to get people back to work. So there's a little bit of difference between what the status of China today and the U.S. Okay, and now pile up on top of this what happened this week. Here you have Mr. Putin, and he met with Mr. Biden, and this is what Mr. Putin said after the show, right after their talks. Says there's no happiness in life. There's only a mirage on the horizon. Putin called the talks productive, but laid blame for the adversarial U.S.-Russia relationship squarely on the U.S. Okay, so it's interesting that he would say there's no happiness in life. I took a college course, macroeconomics, and the instructor the first day came in and he gave a little introduction, and then he said, "In this course, I'm going to define happiness as money. If you have money, you have happiness." And of course, this was a course dealing with money, right? And so the question is, Mr. Putin maybe doesn't have money. Is that his problem? But I'm sure a lot of you people out there, you would say, well, yeah, you more or less agree with that, it's money that runs the world. And of course, if you had a lot of money, man, a lot of your problems would be solved, wouldn't they? So in that sense, I guess you could say, yeah, money is maybe a synonym of happiness. And the question is, what happens when we don't believe in money anymore? Will happiness disappear? Will there be no more love in the last generation? Is love dying? I mean, it used to be families, they used to have kids. We can't say they were all happy, of course not, but I guess between church and state and custom and law and whatever, they managed to keep everybody going. And today, a lot of that is breaking up. And, everybody has what love for maybe 2, 3, 4 years, maybe even less. And then they find new love and then another new love and another new love. Is love dying? Does the last generation end up with love? Food for thought. Okay, another fellow says along these lines with Putin and Biden says nuke bombs are fake. Hiroshima was reopened the next day. You open up shop, no problem. Chernobyl and Nevada are safe with no unusual radiation. Well, yeah, otherwise you'd have to worry about going to those casinos, Maybe you should hit it instead with the Indian reservations. They all have casinos, and maybe they don't have as much radiation as Nevada. Believing in nuke bombs is a religion. Believing in nuke bombs is not rational. Well, believing is not part of rationality. Believing has nothing to do with rationality. What we do in science is we say we make assumptions to explain something. And you can begin, with an assumption saying, let us assume that nukes exist. Now, have you ever seen one of these ICBMs, silos underneath the ground? Have you seen the person pressing the button, other than in movies, right? Have you seen the person pressing the button to test it out, or where the whole control room is, et cetera, et cetera? Not only in the US, but have you seen them in Russia and China and maybe even, North Korea? Yeah, I mean, it all depends on what you believe in, okay? But to think that we did not throw some nukes, that, that we went to the oceans out there, Pacific Ocean, and just threw a bomb to test it out, and then other people threw them underground, to say that you don't believe that because you weren't there, you didn't see it. Well, it's more or less like the flat earthers saying that, humans never went, let alone to the moon, never went to space. Yeah, you can take it as far as you want. It's more than lack of belief. It's quite irrational. Okay. Yeah, we have learned how to manage nuclear explosions. We know how to build them, but whether we can manage them or not, well, I don't think so. Managing is simply, right now by treaty, and it's trust but verify. That's about it. But if things fall apart around the world, I think they will be pressing the buttons. Part of that issue will be economics. And I think that's the issue, the next issue by this fellow. He says, war is about resources. Yeah, I kind of agree. War, like I explained the other day, has always been done for resources. Even when there were issues such as, religious issues, even those were done for resources, for expansion of the empire. And it was one empire against another empire. That's all it was. And so what were they after? Well, they were after resources. Maybe compel the other side to pay tribute, or maybe because of access to shipping lanes and commercial shipping lanes and so on. And so, yeah, it's always been about resources, economics. War is founded on economics. That's at least the assumption I make when I deal with issues related to war. Okay, related to last week, person says here, what idiots think we are not animals? As a species of life, we need to eat, drink, and have sufficiently socially diversified sex to reproduce efficiently. As long as those preconditions are met, this present species will go on. Okay, yeah, and I think the first two that you mentioned there, eat and drink, that's where we're going to have a little bit of problems. That's what mass extinction is all about. But he says, who who would even say this? Who would even think that we are not animals? Well, someone responds, and he says, we are classified as mammals, but there is so much that separates humans from the animal kingdom. Uh-huh. Well, I think this fellow has to define the word animal scientifically in a way that we can use it consistently, rationally, right? And so all he's got to do is define the word animal. Once we know what an animal is for the purposes of science, right? Then we can use this word consistently in any dissertation. Okay, so all he's got to do is define the word. Then we'll know if a human is an animal or not. And he can't just go back and forth and say, well, for the purposes of science, he's an animal. But when we talk in our religion and our congregation, at our club, our belief club, then we're going to treat man as separate from the animals. But yeah, you can do that in religion, not in science. In science, you got to be consistent with the word. You're either an animal or you're not, and it's black or white, on and off, on or off, yes or no. There's no gray there. You're either part of the animal kingdom or you're not, If you're part of the animal kingdom, hey, you got to proceed with that definition so that people can follow your train of thought. To say that we're animals, but no, we're not, or we're different, or any qualifier that you put in there, well, then you're only trying to protect some religion, that deep-seated religion that you have. Okay, there was an article on climate change this week, and this has to do again with whether we're the last humans on Earth, because we have all these issues out there you got to be, in touch with. Okay? It says, from burgers to chocolate to beer. Oh my God. How climate change will affect what we eat. Remember, the theory is eating. We're going to stop eating. We're going to stop eating because there will be no food. That's why we'll stop eating. Not because we want to stop eating, as one guy says out there. No, it's going to be because we're going to run out of food. Anyways, the article said the continued buildup of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere could imperil nearly 1/3 of global food crop production and over 1/3 of livestock production by 2081 to 2100. I cannot even imagine us reaching 2081. I think we're going to disappear much sooner than that. Some people, those small pockets that might survive, they might reach some age like that. I'm not even sure they would reach that far, but I think they would disappear quite earlier than that, maybe by 2050, 2060, something like that. But this fellow says, or this, the guy who wrote this says, by 2081 to 2100, in that 20-year period, livestock production and crop production will be reduced by 1/3. And he says, there is hope, however, if the world's nations are successful in their goal of limiting global mean temperatures, it's about climate change, right, to warming between 1.5 and 2 degrees C, the impact on food production will be lessened. And the next thing he does, this comes from a report that was, an article that was published. I think some Norwegians or Finnish published this article in a peer-reviewed journal, and this guy just condensed it, okay? And he says that what will disappear, or what is likely to be reduced because of climate change, are grapes, meaning he did an analysis for wine, and I don't want anyone touching wine, please. I'll die without wine. And says that barley might go down as well, and that's beer. Oh my God, they're hitting all my weak spots. Wine, beer, chocolate. I love chocolate. Coffee. I can't live without coffee. I can't live without these things. These guys are saying that this is on its way out. It's slowly dying because they say they will not be able to produce the plants needed to maintain these markets. And part of that, or a great part of that, will be climate change. The climate will not allow these plants to grow in the regions where they're growing today. That's essentially what they're saying. Okay, and but that it didn't stop there. They went ahead and they talked about certain other crops, like saying maybe corn and wheat, which are very important in the world, might have problems. And they also talked about some of the nuts that, some of the trees that, especially in California, they have the certain nuts that might have to be grown in Oregon or Washington state, But this was the issue. The issue is they went into cows. They said meat. Meat and dairy production accounts for 14% of annual greenhouse gas emissions. Deforestation creates grazing land for livestock. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change declared that the prospect of eating less meat could present major opportunities for adaptation and mitigation while generating significant co-benefits in terms of human health. And they're proposing that maybe insect protein might replace meat for humans. I'm wondering, is this about getting everybody to be a vegetarian or a vegan? Is that what this is all about? I mean, is this just propaganda? Some, to enhance this climate change issue that is so popular these days? Now, I'm going to give you my 2 cents worth. Climate change, there's always been climate change ever since the Cambrian. We've had 542 million years of climate change. There's been climate changes throughout history. In fact, I don't think the Earth maintained a single climate ever. Now, that's not the issue. The issue is the climate that we have right now, we have it for the crops that we grow right now. And if the climate happens to change significantly, whatever that means, right? What does that mean? Does that mean that we have to change crops or maybe plant them in the North Pole somewhere? Or, what does it mean? What does it entail? Can we feed 8 or 9 billion people if there's a climate change? Okay, so that's the issue. And, I think there's always been climate change, but this is my 10 cents worth, 2 cents worth, maybe 1 cent worth. Climate change is totally irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. People who talk about climate change have nothing better to do or don't understand extinction. And here again, we're talking about extinction where I'm saying that climate change is unrelated to extinction in any way, shape, or form. Had nothing at all what to do with it in any age, in any era, in the past eon. Never did climate change destroy a single species. That wasn't the cause. Okay, that's my 10 cents worth. The cause for mass extinctions was food. Did food disappear because of climate change? Like, in the mass extinctions, Ordovician, Permian, Triassic, and so on. Is that what happened? Was there a climate change and that triggered the plants to die? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The plants died because their cycle ran out. Okay? Their cycle ran out. They became old. They lost their genetic diversity. There was an overturning of their population pyramid. And the animals that depended on them, when they couldn't find any more of the food that they and their ancestors had eaten for millions of years, that's when it came to an end. Climate change had nothing to do with it. If anything, climate change helps the next generation. When the new species of plants are radiating because the old species are dying, then yes, climate does help one over another. So I say that climate change has something to do not only with the plants, but with the animals that rely on those plants and where they are on the planet. So if maybe an animal makes the most of the fact that there's heat wherever he is, maybe he's close to the equator, he's going to grow big, and the other guy who can't take it as much, he's going to move to more temperate areas or maybe the cold areas. And so you end up, with a polar bear, all white, up north, and you end up with a grizzly, in Wyoming or whatever. So, I think that's the way it's done by Mother Nature. Essentially, what happens is that climate only, again, it's an idea, it's a proposal. I'm saying that climate only helps the radiation that comes right after mass extinction. Okay, so that's my 10 cents worth on climate change. I think people should forget about it. It's not an issue, a moot issue, totally irrelevant. Okay, at least as far as extinction is concerned. Climate change, even if it changes by, 5 degrees in this next century, it's going to go so slow and our economy is going to die a lot sooner than climate change ever happens. Okay, here's the next issue. And again, along the same lines, are we the last humans on Earth? Here we have these ransomware attacks. And this is in parallel with all the killings that are going on, especially in the United States. I mean, there's a mass killing every day. It's no longer news. It's old. You don't know if you read the same article, or was it yesterday or was it today, because it's just one guy going out there and killing 10 people or whatever. And here we have these other fellows. They do some ransomware attacks using Bitcoin as the way to siphon the money out. And there's a company, Colonial, shut down 100 million gallon a day pipeline operations they were providing to the east, okay, which led to nearly a week of widespread fuel shortages along the East Coast. And the Department of Justice ultimately recovered 2.3 million of the 4.4 million cryptocurrency ransom that Colonial paid to the group DarkSide. Man, I sure would like to be part of the dark side. The dark side. Ooh. And other companies hit with these attacks include JBS, a meat supplier, CNA Financial, and insurance company, McDonald's, the hamburger place. Oh my God. Hospitals, transportation providers, and even the Teamsters. And this was after Jimmy Hoffa, after they got rid of him. Okay. So, I don't know. You tell me. You think we're having a little bit of problem with the world? Or is this business as usual? Has there always been problems in the last 1,000 years at least of this nature, where there's always been crooks? But Jesse James had to rob a bank, and these guys are not robbing banks. What they're doing is using cryptocurrency. They're stealing money through the internet. Just by pulling out information from a company and then saying, "Hey, if you want it back, we want $1 million." Now, how's that for robbing and stealing? So we got new kinds of crimes going on. And a lot of that has to do with cryptocurrency, which happened to fall quite a bit these last couple of weeks, right? Is that part of the demise of money, this cryptocurrency? Is this part of the death of happiness? Money is going to disappear in great measure because maybe some game that we play with cryptocurrency runs out of hand, or maybe everybody goes into cryptocurrency more and more and more, and well, that's a problem for collecting taxes. On the one hand, it could be regulated, I guess, but is that part of the equation? The last type of money that we'll ever have will be cryptocurrency, or can you invent a new type of currency that we will use in the next 1,000,000 years? Okay, anyways, food for thought. I always want to say this, that you should do Extinction 101 before 102 if you want to talk about extinction. What is 101? It's mass extinction. First, you got to show that you're an expert on mass extinction. And then you can talk about Extinction 102, which is human extinction. Okay? So, and the reason I put it in those terms is that you need to understand a mass extinction well and understand all the issues there, what died in the past during mass extinctions, and then somehow extrapolate that to man and find out if man can overcome the same mechanism, the same factors that killed the animals in the past. That's my take on that. And then, of course, that's related to this, the question that I put in tandem with that, and that's the homework. And why did the fauna and the seas disappear at the same time, more or less, right, as the animals on land? If you can explain that, well, maybe you have a valid theory for the extinction of man. And, the option is what? To say that man will never disappear. We will live forever. That's what the religious folk, traditional religions, have been saying, at least for the last 2,000 years. You will live forever. Okay? Once you die, your soul goes to heaven, right? And that's what a lot of these people believe.